Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you how to create some really cute Mokume Gane pendants. Now these ones I showed quite a few years ago on Facebook, and I got a lot of requests to make them, and I just never actually got around to showing you guys how to make them. So that is essentially what we're going to be doing today. So I'm just going to pop these to the side. And so what you're going to need to do is you're going to need a sheet of black and white clay. This is Polymer, rolled out on the thick setting of your pasta machine. And then you're also going to need another sheet of black and white run out on basically the thinnest setting of your pasta machine. So the thickest sheets should be about 2 millimeters thick. The thinnest sheets should be at least 1/2 millimeter thick. So let's start with the black. So I've got that here. Then I want to take my sheet of white. I'm going to see if I can run it out on my thinnest setting. I don't want it to ripple, but we'll see if it works. Okay, and I did manage to do that. So now it's about 1/2 millimeter thick. I'll just take that and gently lay that over the top of the black, smoothing as I go to try and get out all of the bubbles. I do have one here that I just want to gently smooth out. There we go. And I've just got 1 or 2 here that still managed to get through. So I'm just busy working those out. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to cut away the excess white, and you can just put that back with your other white. No need to waste that. Okay. And then I just like to flip it to make sure that I did get all of that excess. Yep, pretty much. Okay. Now grab a piece of plain printing paper, and we're going to give this a good burnish, and this is going to show up any air bubbles that are left. It's also just going to smooth out the surface and make it easier and tidier to work with. Okay. Alright, and let's have a look. You should be able to feel bubbles. And I don't see any. See if I can feel any. Okay, so that's all good. So that will be ready to work with now. So I'm just going to put that to the side, and I'm going to basically do the exact same thing with the thick white sheet and the thin black sheet. Going to run this out to my thinnest setting, lay it over the top, do the exact same thing. Okay, and so now we're ready to start making our Mokume Gane. So I'm just going to pop that down in the middle. I'm just going to bring you forward so it's in the middle. There we go. And I'm working with the black instead of the white because it will be easier for you guys to see. But everything I'm doing with the black here, you will do with the white. Okay, and I'm just going to burnish down onto the surface of my tile so that it sticks there for our next process, which is very important. And now you're going to need to choose your cutters, and I'm going to be using my moonstone cutters. So let me just bring those here. If you'll be able to see them off to the side here, but they're these really nice curved shapes. You could freehand cut, but I'm going to end up using these cutters. So I need those, and you're also going to need some small circle cutters. Any type will work. I'm using my mini circle cutters, as you see here, and I'm also going to be using my micro circle cutters, and I've got a fairly good collection of those. Let me just bring those here. There, so I'm going to be using my micro circle cutters too. Okay, so go put these circles off to the side. We will use them in just a moment, but first what you want to do is you want to take your cutter for your pendants, and you want to just take those, and I'm just going to press so that I can see the outline. And this is important because we want to make our circles in the direction of our pendant. So if you have a look here, you can see that the circles kind of go along with the shape. That's what I want to do here. So best thing to do that is just to basically take these and press them onto the surface, and then we can follow that shape with our circle cutters later on. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you can pick that up on the camera. I think you can. So now we're going to grab our larger cutters, which will be these mini cutters, and my largest one's going to be too big. So we're going to start with 4 of these. And now you're going to start with the largest one, and we're going to cut. And now the point of this is that you're not going to cut all the way through. It's very important that you don't do that. You're going to cut about halfway through. So you're going to start, you're going to cut halfway through, and then you're going to lift up. And what that will have done is that will have pushed our thin black layer into the white layer, and so when we shave later on, you'll end up with these kind of spindly, spirally rings, which look really interesting. Press another one in. Okay, and now it's getting a little small down the end, so I'm going to use a small one and press. There we go. Then you're going to go to the next cutter, and it doesn't matter if you get it right in the middle, that's not absolutely necessary. Okay. Then we're going to move on to our microcircles. And generally with the microcircles it's better to use the plastic end because metal is very sharp, and so generally it won't smudge the clay down enough. So if you can use the plastic side of your microcircles, that would be best, because that's going to really smudge these down, especially since these have quite a blunt edge. They're not really supposed to be used to cut, but in this case they will work very well. Okay. And I will just continue doing this. I only have a few more, just one more size to go. Okay. And that is generally where I will stop, and I'm going to repeat that for all of the other ones. Okay, and there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to burnish this out. Now a quick thing, because we've done all of these in the order of our cutters, what I've got to do now is I have the cutters over here, and they're supposed to match up, and I've just laid them off to the side in the order that I have them in over here, so that when I've burnished this out and I can't actually see the outlines anymore, I'll still be able to match up the cutters to the circles once we've shaved. I hope that makes sense. Then I'm going to take a piece of plain printing paper, and we're going to give this a thorough burnish so that we get rid of almost all of the imprints, so that everything's smoothed out again, and then we can shave it. And this is important because it will press all of those circles together, and so that the entire piece is one piece of clay again. You don't want to shave it before you've done this, because otherwise little pieces come up and it can cause issues. And now everything I've done here you will repeat with the white one. The only difference is you're going to get white rings on black instead of black rings on white, which is what you're going to get with this one. Okay, just make sure I get that. Lift that up, and now you can see we still have some marks. I'm going to continue smoothing until I get rid of all of those. Okay, and now I've got rid of most of the marks. There's still a little bit, but it doesn't matter too much since we're going to be shaving. You just wanted to get rid of the majority of them. Now I've got a nice thin flexible blade here, and we want to go very slowly and very shallow to begin with. And at first you're only going to get black, and that's fine. If you get pure black shavings, that's always good. You can grab those and you can put them back with your black, so you don't actually end up wasting much clay. So I like to just go over the surface and give a first sweep, gather up as much of the black as I can before I start dipping into the white. Because there you can see once you start dipping into the white, that's essentially going to be scrap. which you can use with stuff, but if you can get pure black, that's always great. And hopefully you can see how very slowly, very gently I'm going here. There we are, you can start to see the circles popping through there. And now I just want to show you how I'm holding it. I'm holding it very close. I'm not holding it with the ends like this so that I have little control over it, because this is very flexible. You want to hold it as close with this little blade as possible. Give it a slight bend, so if I show that, that's how much bend I generally give it. And then you just will gently scoop it. And I'm holding my hands against the work surface. That generally helps steady my hands as well. And I'll gently go along like so, and you don't want to scoop too deep. And I will just continue doing this across the entirety of the surface until I start getting some really pretty circles. And now you don't need to clean it up perfectly, because also keep in mind we're going to be giving this a slight sand later on, so I'll show you later on how far I generally go, but you don't want to go as far as you want to go, because you've got to keep in mind that you're also going to be sanding, and that's going to be removing clay, and so you don't have to be pedantic about cleaning it up. Okay, and here is roughly how I would leave it. I might trim a little bit more on this side, but basically this is what I would recommend stopping at, just because at this point if you make a mistake with your blade you could end up ruining the effect, which is something you really don't want to do at this point, because it does take a while to shave this all off slowly. So at this point generally I will stop. Just getting rid of that, there we go. Now you can, we're going to smooth this out, and then generally what you would do is you cut out your pendants, bake it, and then you can sand it. But if you happen to have some isopropyl alcohol, like the 99% sort, you can also give it a very quick spray with that, and it will help you remove some of it. And now it's going to smudge a little bit in the beginning, don't sweat about that, you can worry about that in a second. But what it will do is it will start to remove some of that clay, and so I just want to demonstrate that quickly. And you can see already that it has started to clean it up. So I'll just spray one more time just to give it a quick clean up. But in general, sanding will work very well. So if you happen to have it, it's another great way to remove some of the clay, but it's not absolutely necessary. In general, sanding will do it. But if you're not a big fan of sanding and don't feel like having to be careful as far as that goes, that is another option for you. So now what we're going to do quickly is I'm just quickly going to remove this hair here. There we go. Now everything I'm doing here, again, repeat with the white sheet. Now I'm going to take a piece of plain printing paper, and we're going to give this a burnish because it's going to have a few nicks and hills and valleys due to the blade, and we're just going to be smoothing that out. And now keep in mind I'm doing this with black and white because it's a beautiful contrast, but you can use any colours you want. You could, for instance with this one we had a thick layer of white with a thin layer of black over the top. You could replace the white with possibly a skinner blend, or you could replace the thin black with a skinner blend. There are lots of different things that you could do with this, so feel free to play around. If you want something with high contrast, black and white is the way to go, but if you want something with a bit more colour, feel free to play around and basically do whatever you want. Okay, and that should be completely smooth. There are a few areas where there are still issues, so I'm just going to continue smoothing until this is as smooth as I can possibly get it. Okay, and there we go. So now I've got these in order here. So I'm just going to start with the first one, and I'm going to position it into the right spot. And then cut down. Now I'm going to see if I can pop this one in without having to move this one. Better to remove this one first. Okay, and I'll just go through and continue cutting until I've cut out all of my pieces. Okay, then we should be able to just gently lift this up. And there we go. And this, of course, is going to be leftovers. We can use that later on. But there we go. We've got our nice, beautiful pieces. Okay, and I'm just gently touching up these edges here where there are sharp edges. Just because sometimes they need a gentle tap to smooth them out. But basically, that is how those are going to look. So now I want to put those into the oven at Primo's recommended temperature for at least 40 minutes. And then when they are done, I can show you how to do the backings, because we need to do the backings. Yeah, and then we can do the sides and we can do all the finishing. But before I put these in the oven, I'm going to do the exact same with the other one. I'm going to bake them, and then I'll show you what they look like after they're baked. Okay, so while that's in the oven, got probably about 5 minutes left while it's in the oven. So I'm going to take our scraps that we got from our Mokume Gane, and we're going to quickly make a sheet for the backing of our pendants when they come out of the oven. Because this is all pretty, it's got nice bits and pieces in it that will look nice as a backing. So we'll just prepare it and then run it out into a sheet, and then that way we get much less waste out of this project than we would if we just went with a plain black backing. So I'm just chopping it all up. Now I'm just going to kind of squiff that together, because I just want the black and the white pieces all somewhat evenly distributed. So that just means I have to chop it a few times, like so. And then just squiff it all back up together again. Okay, there we go. Okay, and that should be all we need to do. We should have a nice even distribution of the black and the white. So now all I want to do is just want to take that and just press that together into one solid log of clay. And then start working it into kind of a square cane shape. So more like a rectangle. So we can cut slices from it. And I'm just busy pressing it together because as little air bubbles as possible will be great. Okay, there we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'll just slice that. And I'm going to take slices that are probably about just under 2 millimeters thick from this, like so. Okay, and you can see it's got an interesting effect. It'll make a nice backing. You could even use this to make main pendants if you wanted. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to just gently squish those together so that we can start forming a sheet. And there we go. Now you can see we have these big gaps, so what I'll do is I'll just gently squish these like so, and that should help close that gap up. And I'll just use my roller to roll this flat. And I'm not going to burnish it. The reason I burnish instead of rolling generally is because I do not want the pattern to expand. I want it to stay exactly the same but smooth out. With a roller generally you're going to have distortion, but in this case that is fine, and the roller is generally quicker than burnishing. Okay, there we go. Now I'll just pick that up off the tile. You can see the back looks quite nice as well. And I'm just going to roll on the back as well, just to make sure that's together. And then we're going to run this through the pasta machine to thin it out so that we have enough for our backing. And also because we don't want it to be too thick, I want it to be about 1 millimeter thick maximum before we apply it to our beads. So now I'm just going to bring this down to about a 1mm thick setting, and I'm going to run it through. And what I'm doing is I'm not going to be running it from this end to this end, make it wider. I want to make it longer. Like so. Okay, there you go, you can see that. So now our backing is basically ready to work with. And so I'm just going to leave this off to the side here until our beads are ready to come out the oven. Okay, and so here they are out of the oven. And now you can see that the backs are not very tidy. They've got these tiny little bubble spots, and just in general aren't very tidy. And also I like to make my pieces a little bit thicker in case I do want to drill them through the side instead of through the top. So I like to make my pieces around probably about 3mm thick as a general even, just to make sure that I'll be able to string them any way that I want. Okay, and here you can see how pretty those look. They do need a sand, but we will get to that later on. So I'm just going to pop those to the side here. We don't need to have them all on the tile. I'm just going to grab one, let's say this one, and this. And now this clay is pretty sticky. It's pretty warm, pretty fresh, and at this point I don't really worry about using liquid clay. If your clay that you're going to be using as backing is a little bit on the harder side and isn't very sticky, then you might want to use some liquid clay. You just take this translucent liquid clay and you brush it on the back of your piece and then apply your backing, and that helps the two stick together. But when the clay is sticky like this, I generally don't worry about that because I don't really like using the liquid clay. It gets in the way and just can end up being quite mucky. So anyway, I'm going to just press that down. Then you're going to need a craft knife. You're just going to use that craft knife to just trim out roughly around your piece. You don't have to make it exact. Okay. There we go. Just lay that over the top. I'm going to move this out the way so you can see. Then just lay that over the top and press. And I'm not going to worry about fingerprints at this point because I am going to texture the back. And then at these edges, what I like to do is I like to smooth them with my finger, like so. And this will give me a slightly beveled edge, as well as it will stick it down to the pendant a lot better, in my opinion. And a beveled edge is generally nicer on your skin as well. And now it does look a bit messy at the moment. Don't worry about that, we will clean it up in a minute. Okay, then just run your hand along the edge there, just to smooth it out. Just move this out the way. And then I just use this aquarium sponge to texture the back. And this removes the issue as far as fingerprints go because it will cover up that with texture. And also means any smudges aren't quite as obvious either. And then I'll just run my hands along the edge just one more time, just to smooth it and make sure it's in the right position, with no bits hanging over the edge. Okay, and then always look at it from the front. And if I can see white peeking around, then I need to smooth it a little bit more because it's peeking around the edge. But that looks about right. Okay, and so there is our backing. And now we will clean up the sides later on, don't worry about that. If you don't want to do a smear later on, which is what we're going to be doing, you can take some 99% alcohol, spray it on a wet wipe, and you can run that along the edge to clean up any muckiness. but we are going to be doing a smear later on because that's just generally the best way to finish it off. But if you have trouble with it or just do not feel like doing it, this is another way to clean up the edges. Okay, let's see how that looks. And that looks pretty nice, but the smear generally looks better, and I'll show you how to do that later on. So now I'm going to put that back onto a piece of plain printing paper, and you would finish all of the others doing the exact same thing, and then you would put these into the oven for about half an hour at pretty much recommended temperature, and then after that I'm going to show you how to clean up the edges. Okay, so our pieces are out of the oven, and so the next step is going to require some black polymer clay, and I'm using Polymer again. And all you're going to do is you're just going to take a ball of the black clay, roll it in your hands, and this is going to warm it up and make it a lot easier to work with. If you're having trouble with the clay not sticking to your piece, and you'll understand what I'm talking about in just a moment, you can always mix some liquid clay into it to make it a little bit stickier. And this is a little bit stiff for me today. It's not quite as sticky as I would like it to be, so it will probably end up causing a bit of trouble. So you're just going to take some translucent liquid clay. I'm using Kato, you can use the Sculpey brand as well. And translucent's generally the best. Just going to fold that in, and this is quite messy, so what I would recommend doing is not putting this through your pasta machine. Not until you've got all of the liquid clay somewhat mixed into your normal clay, because this stuff will gum up your pasta machine and cause all sorts of issues. So it's just better to do this part by hand, or even if you have a roller, because a roller is fairly easy to clean with just a wet rub. Pasta machine is going to cause all sorts of issues, so don't condition this in your pasta machine, it will turn out quite gross. Okay, so that's just how you would incorporate liquid clay. Now I'm just going to mix that all together until we don't have any shiny spots left, and this will just make it softer, stickier and easier to apply. Then I warm that up in my hands, and the warmer it is, the easier it is to work with as well. Okay. I'll just clean this up very quickly, and now we're ready to work. So you're just going to need a very small amount of that. And let me grab some clay, and here we'll use this piece. And you can see the back here, and we might give this a light sand just to smooth it out, but in general I'm pretty okay with that. And the front obviously needs to be sanded still. Okay, and just roll that into a tube and just smear it along the length like so. And we will clean up this mess along the sides in just a moment. Just going to put a tube there, and you smooth along the length. And do that for all four sides. Okay, then when we've done that, I'm just going to clean off my fingers. Go. And then we're just going to smooth like so. And if you're having trouble with it and it's peeling up and stuff like that, generally wetting your hands a little bit can help a lot as well. So that's why I have a wet wipe off to the side. They just keep my hands nice and damp, which means that the clay doesn't stick to my hands, and so therefore will move along much nicer. And everything I'm doing here, you would repeat for all of the others. Okay, and there we go, nice clean sides. This will smooth out fingerprints, all sorts of things. Then I'll just smooth from the front as well, just to make sure that we covered everything. And there we go, sides are much nicer and neater now. So I'll repeat with all of the others, then you put this back into the oven for about 15 minutes just to cure that clay, and then after that we're going to give it a sand. Okay, and so these are out of the oven. And so you can see the edges are nice and clean now, and I'll show that in depth later on, but now we are going to do some sanding. So I'm off by the sink here, and these are the sanding papers that I'm going to use in here. They're sanding discs, and I got them from Linda's Art Spot. I'll provide a link to her shop in the links below. And now I'm going to skip the first two, because these first two are quite coarse. They're a 180 and 240, so I'm skipping over to the 400. Okay, then I've got a sink full of water here that has some dishwashing liquid in it, and the dishwashing liquid just means that the clay doesn't stick inside the sanding discs. Okay, so let's choose one of these. Let's go with this one. And these have just come out of the oven, so they're a little bit warm, so I'm just going to dip them in the water very quickly. And I'll dip the sanding discs in. Okay, and then you're just going to sand. And I always sand by the sink, because it means that I can keep my work wet, which means that you don't get any particles of dust flying through the air, which is something you really don't want. And also it just is a lot tidier to do this by sink than on my desk, because otherwise things on my desk get wet, things like that. So I'm just going to start with a 400, and I'll probably go up to about the 600, and I'll do it for all of them. We don't need a very coarse sand because we're going to be putting resin on this, and that will cover up most of the tiny little scratches. The main purpose behind doing the sanding here is just to clean up those circles. So let me just bring that here for you to see. So if I bring one over here, hopefully there you can see the difference. But basically it's just to shine them up, make them look cleaner, and then we can move on to doing the resin. Okay, so I've just finished up sanding all of them. And I'm not sure if the camera's going to be able to pick this up. I'll bring one up in a second so that you can see. But hopefully you can see that the surface is cloudy because of the scratches. That's fine. The resin will take care of that, so don't worry about it. The point is that it's nice and clean, and that you can clearly see the circular shapes. So I'll just pop this off to the side here. And I'm going to bring over a silicone resin mat. I'm just going to, let's see, which one do I want to use? Yeah, we'll use this one. Okay, and you can see that. And I'm going to be using Lisa Pavelka's Magic Gloss. It's a UV resin that will set in about 5 minutes, but I like to leave it under light for half an hour for a full cure. It's a UV resin. There are lots of other UV resins you can use. Another one that I would recommend using if you don't have UV resin and don't have a UV light is ice resin. That 2-part resin will work quite well as well. So now I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to pour a bit onto the surface. Like so. And already you can see there how the scratches become invisible. So now just gently going to bring that over to the edges. And everything I'm doing with this one, I will do with the others. This is a very nice doming resin. So it is really nice for these sorts of pieces. You get a very nice dome from it. There we go. And I'm just making sure that I spread it across all the edges. Making sure I've got everywhere. I think I want to add just a touch more over here, like just a drop more, just so that it goes out to this little corner here. Okay, and then I'll repeat with all of the others. You can scoop out little air bubbles like that one over there. And then when I have finished all of the others, I'm going to put it into the UV light for half an hour. And then when it is done, I will show you how they look. Alright, and here they are out of the UV light. So you can see how much better they look now that they have had the resin coating over the top. The unpleasant scratches have disappeared, which are really nice. And yeah, so basically that is it. Now this is going to be basically it for this tutorial. If you want to learn how to do the drilling and how to create a necklace, I have lots of different tutorials on YouTube already on how to do this sort of thing, so go and check those out. There's actually a playlist for a bunch of different projects that you could have a look at. So go and check that out. There's lots of different ways that you could use these, and depending on what you want to use them for, you're going to drill them differently. You could drill them through the side, they are thick enough for that. You could drill them through the front, you could drill them from the thick side or the thin side. It really is up to you. So go and have a look at some of those tutorials. There are many tutorials available on YouTube. If you have become a patron, there are also a bunch of tutorials on there that you could go and have a look at as well. And if you aren't a patron, I would deeply appreciate you considering to become one, as that really helps support this channel continue putting out videos such as this one every single week. So please do consider becoming a patron. You get exclusive tutorials there for patrons only, and they include a lot of different tips and tricks, ranging from simple to quite complex, so do check that out. And I do hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. There are lots of ways that you can use this, so even if I just take this and pop them together like so, you could see that you could string them together in quite a few different ways. That's why I made quite a few pendants today, because, well, the more pendants you have, the more options you have as far as stringing them goes. So play around with it, make lots of different pendants, and maybe after you've finished making them, just pop them into a baggie and leave them for a little while. Sometimes inspiration will strike a while after you've made them. Don't force yourself to make something if you don't have any ideas in mind. I might revisit this and see what I can make with them if this tutorial is popular enough. But anyway, I've rambled on long enough. If you enjoyed the tutorial, let me know in the comments below. If you have questions, also let me know, and I'll try to get them to them as quickly as possible. And I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.